Welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host, Scotty McCoy, and I have a treat for you all tonight. I have Troy Oelke, and he is a Friday the 13th theoretician who has a lot of theories about the Friday the 13th franchise, and I have been looking for this interview for so long. Hi Troy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing great. I've been waiting for this interview for a long time now. I mean, since Greg basically got me your number and set this up, and I'm really excited to start diving into Friday the 13th.
Well, fantastic.
Awesome. So we're gonna go in like the order of the movies. I wrote them out. So we'll start off with the 1980 Friday the 13th. And the first question I got is, what are your theories on the marriage and relationship of Mrs. Voorhees and Jason's father, Elias?
Okay, so I would like to first state that my theories are off the movies themselves. I ignore all graphic novels, books, stories, comics, any of that. And so I have put in my own. My whole point is fixing the timeline.
Right.
Because as you know, there's a lot of gaping holes and stuff. So I've been working on fixing that. Now, so what I have for the relationship between Elias and Pamela is, in the late 30s, they met and had a whirlwind romance. They got married right away. Too early. By the second year, everything was getting really rocky, and so they had a pretty rocky marriage. And then, he did a lot of. He was a hunter and a fisher. Worked a lot at the mills, and he did logging, and he did kind of a lot of different stuff. So he didn't have one exact job all the time, but he was always working. And so their marriage was terrible. I mean, but it was really rocky. He was getting more and more abusive and distant, and so and he was accusing her of having an affair, and then she got pregnant. So this kind of settled everything down, and they thought perhaps this is maybe what they need. Maybe they could salvage this relationship now that they have a child. And as the pregnancy went along, he seemed to be more and more suspicious, more, wondering if that's his baby and getting kind of like that way. And then she had the child. And when he saw that thing, he was like, holy shit, and so he was even more now, it was that hit him on top of his suspicions. So now he's not even sure if he wanted this thing, or whatever. So they tried to just go on about their lives and be a family. And he just, after this, it was the last straw with the kids. He started to really start to drink. And then the more he drank, the more he resented this child, and the more he accused her of having an affair. And so what I have is she was cooking breakfast one morning in the cabin. Big cast iron skillet. She's frying some bacon and stuff. And little Jason's in his high chair by the table. And Elias comes in the room and sits down kind of next to Jason, in this typical bad mood, reeking like alcohol. And Jason knocks over his food bowl, and it kind of splashes all over the table and shit. Well, Elias just backhands it. Boom! Just backhands this kid, knocks his whole high chair and everything over. Well, by the time he could turn back around, Pamela had turned around with that cast iron skillet, and she beat his skull into just powder. I mean, she just beat him to where crushed the side of his face in, like smashed his eye socket down, burned it all up. She just beat him and beat him and beat him and beat him till he was, dead or dying. And then So then, and then she, basically, at this point, Jason his chair had fallen over and he had gotten out of his chair and he had stood up now and he was holding a knife and he was like shaking and that's when Pamela, looked over at Elias on the floor and looked at Jason and said, "It's all done. You've done your job well and Mommy is pleased. Now come to Mommy. Mommy has a reward for you." So Jason looks down at Elias and starts to squeeze the knife handle again. Pamela said, "Jason, Mother is talking to you." Directs him over towards Elias, points down to his bloodied face and says, "Come and kneel down." He kneels and looks at Elias and he smiles. Pamela says, "That's my good boy." And then Elias slips into unconsciousness. That's when she dumps his body in the lake. And at that point, she becomes very free. She feels liberated. And that's pretty much how their relationship went there.
Okay. That's awesome. So in the beginning of the movie, we see an unknown figure, who was apparently Mrs. Voorhees, kill Barry and Claudette. But is there any theories on how Claudette was killed? Because we see Barry get killed, but we don't see the death on screen of Claudette.
No, I think she was just stabbed there too.
Okay.
I feel like that one's pretty kind of self-explanatory there. It just seemed to me like she just got stabbed and we got that nice open mouth shot,
Right. I think, and I know there was behind the scenes pics and everything of, the knife going towards the throat and everything. So, obviously, because Barry was stabbed with the hunting knife in the stomach, so it's kind of I didn't know if there was anything more to more to that story, but it is kind of self-explanatory at that point.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are your theories on the whole Alice Hardy and Steve Christie relationship?
Okay, well, I think that a summer, or maybe even a couple of summers before, young Alice came into, she had worked with Steve, obviously, before,
right.
And I feel like he was the older guy, and he took advantage of her. And so when she had come back this time, she wasn't falling for it this time. She wasn't gonna. I think she was realizing now that she's older and matured that this guy had taken advantage of her, and was generally kind of a creep.
Exactly. Let's see, what do we got here? What are your theories on the fact that Jason didn't really drown in the lake, as Mrs. Voorhees is led to believe?
Okay, this ties into a lot of my stuff here. So Jason, he snuck out at night and tried to go swimming by himself. Now, he did this because, he didn't want to do it in front of the other kids, and the other kids make fun of him, and he felt stupid. He did, and he wanted so desperately to be, part of the normal group of kids or whatever, and be able to do what they do and be normal, that he decided to go out. He was going to earn that swimming badge himself, damn it. He was going to prove to them by the next day that he had it figured out. And obviously it didn't go so well for him. So basically he struggled in that lake for a couple of hours. I mean, just barely struggling, and more or less he ended up across the lake in like the reeds offshore, barely alive, where he was then picked up by someone. A very special someone who I'll be getting to here. Okay, let's go through your questions first, and then I'll just rip through my my whole thing here. It's kind of covering it as we go, pretty much.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I guess I'll add a bonus question in. This doesn't happen until like pretty much part 4-ish. But I was wondering, how does Jason then know how to be in the water if he didn't know how to swim as a boy and he supposedly drowned in the lake? Like, we see him drown, Sandra in part 7, and we see him jump out of the water to kill, Judy Arns and Samantha in part 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he has spent a lot of time coming out of the water in several different movies.
Yes.
I think there's two possibilities here. One is after his near drowning, to where, he was just on the brink, on the verge of death when he was washed up in the reeds and found. I think that he either no longer cared about the water or even dying at that point. And either that or he was actually taught after that.
Okay.
How to be more, how to swim better.
Okay. All right. So what are your theories on the end of the movie with young Jason pulling Alice into the water? Because obviously Jason isn't dead as seen in the sequels. So was it just a dream, or was it a hallucination, or was it actually reality?
Yes. So, according to, I believe it was Sean S. Cunningham, it took me a while to find it, but part 1 was simply a dream sequence.
Okay.
Part 2, when he jumps through the window and Ginny's there, and that is not a dream sequence.
Okay.
Therefore, Muffin lived.
Okay. That was one of my questions. Because part 2 is next, and I will answer that. I'll ask that one next. This is flowing smoothly. So my thoughts then is, what are your theories on Muffin coming across? Actually, wrong one. That's the other Muffin one. Actually, yes, that is it. What are your theories on Muffin coming across the supposed legs of Jason? Because there was an animal found in the woods mangled, and then Muffin reappeared at the end of the movie. So what is their actual fate?
Okay, so when Muffin approaches Jason's feet, or the feet of someone,
yes,
that someone is not interested in the dog whatsoever at that moment. Now, had he not been busy, he may have eaten the dog, because they hunt, trap, fish, and they eat whatever they can get. That other mangled animal, I imagine, was probably just killed by another animal. But Muffin, didn't seem to be. I think that the owner of those feet were preoccupied.
Okay.
And just looked at the dog as insignificant.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot bigger fish to fry, I should say.
Right. All right. So then the burning question is, if the ending isn't a dream, what happened to Paul? What's his fate?
Paul was killed.
Okay.
And he was taken back to the shack.
Okay.
We can gather this just from making it up because of what we know. Now, like I said, I ignore all other, graphic novels and stories and stuff. But the fact is, there is a picture of Paul's dead body on the back of one of VHSs.
Right.
And it appears as though he may be in the shack. So it just made perfect sense, due to the fact that Ginny, being wheeled out by the ambulance, was asking where's Paul. So we knew he was not on scene at that point. So he was taken away. Mm-hmm. And I believe he was murdered with the half of a pitchfork that Ginny had in her hand when she was knocked unconscious when he came crashing through the window.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. So how did Jason then happen to find Alice at her apartment? And is Jason really the killer of part 2? Because after all, due to part 3 picking up right after part 2, and in part 2 Jason is a hillbilly with hair, and in part 3 Jason is bald. What is your theory on this entire story?
Boy, am I glad you asked that question. Okay, so here's the deal.
Okay.
When Pamela beat Elias to death,
okay,
she drug his body, threw him in the back of the pickup, drove him down to Crystal Lake, and dumped his body in there. Yeah. Well, he did have severe brain damage, massive fractures, broke teeth, crushed eye socket, all that. but he survived.
Right.
And Elias crawled out on the other side of the lake, and being, like I said, he's brain damaged. He's really, really messed up. He has kind of flashes of reality come and go, some coherency here and there. Well, he hunts, he fishes, he whatever. So he got right to survival skills while he's all fucked up. He's really, really messed up.
Right.
So he spends time gathering up pieces and parts and things to build a shelter. And Elias gets this shack all built up and starts living out of it, and just lives in the woods, and that's what he's going to do for the rest of his life. Well, while collecting things for the shack, one of the things he collected was a bathroom mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And when he looked in that mirror, he saw his face. Now, he went from a good-looking country boy to someone whose face is fucking bashed in. His eye is sunken down halfway down his face because his eye socket was so crushed in, teeth bashed out. The side of his face is burned. It's all, you can see it in the end, but it's all burned. And so he could not stand the look of himself. So he fucking took a potato sack and he made a fucking mask to cover his fucking humiliatedly ugly face. Mm-hmm. Now, he only cut out one eye hole because the crushed eye doesn't even work anymore.
Okay.
So Elias is the killer in part 2. Now, Elias is the hood-wearing fella that was running around. So what happened here was, after he lived in that cabin, or in that shack for quite a while, with his traumatic brain injury and all that shit, he went out and was hunting and trapping one day. And there in the reeds right off the shore was Jason. Now, I'm not sure if he 100% recognized Jason or not, but he just reached down and grabbed him and threw him over his fucking shoulder and went on about hunting. And when he was done hunting, he also drugged the kid home, kind of threw him in a little room there with a mattress. So he would then kind of like, kick him a bowl of some kind of slop or some leftover bones or whatever the guy was, didn't finish. He was not a good father. Not a good father. He wasn't training Jason. He was basically teaching Jason that I'm not going to help you, but if you learn to help yourself, you'll survive. And basically, you can learn by watching me.
Right.
And so, he would feed him a little bit from time to time, but he immediately started up how to fish and trap and doing all this other stuff. And, he would get like little memories from time to time, flashbacks of his family life, early life. And so he even went out and he managed to rustle up a high chair, which you can see in the cabin in the movie. There's a high chair in the middle of that shack. Now, Jason was too big for this high chair at this time, being, however, it was 11 years old or something. He was too big for a high chair either way. So they never ended up using it, but Elias's brain doesn't work quite right, but that's kind of how he ended up piecing that together and putting that, that's how that high chair ended up in there. But, so, he was going to teach him to take care of himself, basically. That's the only way he was going to survive, is to learn to take care of himself, and that's what he did. Right. He learned to hunt, fish, trap, build, and this is all on top of what he learned at Camp Crystal Lake, like his merit badges and knots and those kind of things. Right. So he learned to butcher animals and how to cook them and eat them. Well, one night, Jason was actually asleep. He usually followed Elias around on almost everything he did. But he was asleep one night, and Elias went out night hunting. Well, he was on... He heard a huge commotion. Looked across the lake, and there were two women fighting. And when he saw people, he usually watched because he didn't want anybody around. But he always watched to see who was in in his neck of the woods or whatever. And then a minute later, he realized that was Pamela, and then saw her beheaded.
Okay.
So then what Elias did was he made his way around the lake as fast as he could, which obviously took a while. By the time he got out there, Alice had sailed off in the canoe. Well, Elias picked up Pamela's head, looked at it. While he's looking at it, he's getting all kinds of the earlier flashbacks, but more of the better times of flashbacks, you know. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, he began to look around, and then anger started to set back in, and he realized that Alice had gotten away. And so he made his way into the camp, and he went into the file cabinet, and he looked through the files until he saw the one with the picture of Alice attached to it. Okay. So he took that. It has her address, her phone number, all of it. And so he took that. And, you know, he knows how to drive, and that's not a skill that he ever lost. That's natural to him. And like I said, he kind of comes and goes as far as his brain injury. But so he got her address, and he went there, and he killed her. Okay. And he brought her body back for Jason and for Pamela, because now he has his family unit together. Right. He's got her head on the shrine. He's got Jason there. And so he brought her back to show his family that, you know, he had taken care of that. Okay. And then, let's see here. And then, so he made the shrine and everything. And then, so that kind of puts us to Ginny, Paul, and all the other campers coming in, you know. Right. And then they're all sitting around the campfire, and they're talking about the legend of Jason. Now, everyone was mistaken for Jason. The murders of 58. Now, this is all due to the fact, first of all, we're at Child's Camp. Mm-hmm. A boy drowned in the lake. Once that boy drowned in the lake, he became a legend amongst the camper kids. You know how kids are. You know, it's the boy in the lake, and if he's not in the lake, then he's in the woods. You know, that boy that drowned in the lake he's everywhere. You know, or whatever. So he became this big legend. So in the murders of 58 that went unsolved were blamed on Jason. That was the boy in the lake. And then when Pamela killed everybody, while the people actually did find out who it technically was, it didn't matter. The legend still, Jason got credit for those murders. So it was Jason, Jason, Jason. So by the time part 2 came along, they were talking all about Jason. It was all about Jason. Even the mistaking Pamela's murders for Jason. Mm-hmm. And then throughout that movie, you know, they figured even when Ginny in the end there, she thought that was Jason. She truly believed it was Jason, but it wasn't. So let's see here. So they believed all that, and he got all the credit. So if you take a look at Elias, he was a lot more slender. He was shorter. He wore coveralls and the hood. Mm-hmm. At the very, very same time. So Friday the 13th Part 3 was literally the day after Friday the 13th Part 2. Right. This would have put Elias, or, you know, some people thought was Jason, running around killing in the coveralls and hood. At the same time, he had attacked Chris Higgins a year or 2 or even 3 before in the green shirt with the light slacks that he's still wearing at the beginning of Part 3 when he goes to Harold's store. So he's been wearing those same clothes the whole time. He has a smooth, baby butt smooth head with no hair on it. He has no facial hair whatsoever, and he has his I think all his teeth are even there. He is fucked up, but they're all there. So same exact timeline, but we're talking about 2 completely different people. The Jason who attacked Chris Higgins, you know, obviously was completely different at the same time. And then some people, one person asked me, well, why do you suppose that he brought back, I can't remember her name. She had the great shorts in Part 2. Let me think. Was it Terry? Anyway, yeah, Terry. Okay. Terry. So Terry was the only other person that he brought back to the shack. Right. So someone said, well, why would he bring her back? And nobody else, what was up with her? And it's because Elias did that for Jason because he knew that Jason had attacked Chris Higgins a summer or 2 before and thought he was interested and girlies. So he gave him a fucking dead girly. Well, he kind of played with it a little bit. I don't think he raped it. I don't think he raped Chris Higgins either. I think he just probably fondled her and looked at her lady parts, and he didn't really know what the fuck he was doing. But so that's why he brought that body back there, because of the thing there. And then in her flashback, again, he's wearing the exact same clothes that he showed up to Edna and Harold's store in. Now, this would make Harold Jason's first victim.
Okay.
And he'd been wearing the same clothes for years, because they get that shit off, stolen off stolen off a clothesline or something,
Right.
And so they wear what they wear until, it's not like they go shopping. So, and then, let's see here. Then when the cop in the beginning of part 2 sees Elias run across the road, and he chases him all the way back to the shack, when he opens up that door, you see the horror on his face before he gets hammer clawed in the back of the head by Elias from behind. But what is in that room is Pamela's head, Alice's body, and Jason sitting there.
Okay.
And he was shocked, and then whack, he got hit with that and killed.
Wow.
And then there was a couple other parts when Scott got caught. See, that's another thing too. It seems like this Jason part 2 used way more different shit. You had the spear, and you had the trap, and you had all this other stuff. Well, the trap, I believe it was Terry said, I think it's probably one of Paul's traps. So they mistakenly thought it was one of Paul's traps.
Right.
Well, really, it was one of Elias's hunting traps. And when he heard that, of course, he went up there and killed him. Let's see here. The part 2 house was a lot closer to the shack than any of the other camps and any of the other locations in the series are. Like Camp Blood was across the lake.
Right.
This house happened to be closer to the shack than any of the other ones. Another thing, so Jason does not talk. Elias does. Somebody gave an eyeball to a vagrant that happened across the remains of one of the victims. So I say Elias told him to warn the others and to stay away. Okay. And as you know, later in part 3, there were other parts of the body. And so that's the guy. Now that further proves it was Elias, because Jason doesn't talk, and he told me to warn you. So that was Elias telling him that, and I think that he, like Muffin, saw this guy as no threat whatsoever, but also an opportunity to get the word out to stay the hell out of my neighborhood. So we've covered the differences, the way they look at the same exact time. Now we get to Ginny when she puts on the sweater. Now in the movie they talk about, and I want to say maybe it was at the bar, but Ginny was studying psychology.
Right. So
that's why she tried to put the sweater on. Now she believed this was Jason because of the legend, so she put the sweater on. And when Elias finally broke through the door and he saw the sweater on her and the young face, it kind of brought him to the flashback again of the old life, and then when she started to say, "It's okay, Jason," and Neil, that's why people think it's Jason too. I mean, she thought it was Jason, but what he was seeing was what she was saying to little baby Jason as he was slipping into unconsciousness after she had beat his face in with that skillet years ago. And the flashback of him seeing the last thing that he saw her say was all that before he went unconscious. And so he was seeing that, and then when he saw her head, that snapped him out of it. And then the rest is history as far as that. But so the end, he jumped through the window, and I believe he killed Paul with the half a pitchfork. And then Elias took Paul's body, and he took Paul's body back to the shack. He didn't quite make it to the shack with Paul's body. He actually dropped it, and then he made it to the shack, and he collapsed on the floor. And then, like at the end, we see him pull the blade out and crawl off, and he crawls off and dies. Jason eventually buries him, and so that bloody machete that killed his father lay on the floor. And this is a strong, strong reason why the machete became his weapon of choice.
Okay.
So let's see here. Oh, yeah, so when he kills Shelley, the reason why he chose, when he hadn't been wearing a mask all these years, even those years back, he wasn't wearing a hood when he attacked Chris Higgins. So these are separate people. So this is, so Jason, again, you know, the reason why he tried to swim and all that shit, because he was jealous of the kids. He wanted to be able to do what they wanted to. He wanted to play sports so bad. Baseball, basketball, whatever. He wanted to be on a team. He wanted to wear a uniform. He wanted to wear a helmet. You know, the whole thing, he wanted to be part of that team. Well, when he killed Shelley and he saw that mask, a little part of him from that was like, kind of like, saw that as neat, you know, it's
right.
Like, he always kind of wanted to wear one of those. But ultimately, he ended up wearing it because his father wore a mask. So he decided, I will too. And so that's why he chose to put on that mask. Let's see here. In fact, so in part 3 even, there's almost some homage kills to his father. So Fox and, not Ollie, but the other bike guy, I can't remember his name.
Loco.
Loco. So Fox and Loco are both killed by pitchfork in the barn. Right. Now, when Jason walked through that barn, he could have chosen tons of different weapons, but he chose the pitchfork because his father had a pitchfork in the last one, killed Paul with it and all that shit, and tried to kill Ginny with it. So that was a little pitchfork-inspired thing there. But and then, so if we kind of move on to part 4, that one is pretty self-explanatory. However, I may delve into who is Tommy's real father at some point here. But let's move on
to my questions again.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Give me some before we move on here.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. That's a good stopping point at that, because then we get more in depth with that in part 3 with Jason and about Paul and everything as well, even though that is a part 2 situation. But I do get more in depth with that. But with part 2 again, we don't see how Terry gets killed. Do you have any theories on how Jason actually killed her?
Killed who? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
To kill Terry.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Very gently, hopefully.
I know.
No, yeah, she didn't look. I don't think she had a knife wound in her. I don't think she had. I didn't see any marks on her, So
right.
maybe this suffocated her, or I don't know.
Okay, all right. And then the last question for part 2 I got is obviously we see inside Jason's or Elias's shack. We see Alice's skeletal remains. We see Terry and Deputy Winslow's in there, along with Pamela's severed head. Do you know if there's any other bodies that were in there that weren't seen, obviously, on camera that Jason might have taken there?
The only other one that I think could be there, possibly in another portion, would have been Paul.
Paul, okay. Sounds good. So then we're getting back to where we last left off now with part 3, and we briefly discussed about Abel, the old man in the road, and he found the eyeball and said that there were other parts of the body found. Do you know whose eyeball and other body parts that they were found in the woods?
Well, I was kind of thinking it might have been a wheelchair guy.
Okay.
Because he took a huge machete across the face, which would crack open that skull, and then rolling down those stairs, and then who knows, maybe he hacked him up at the bottom of that.
Okay.
Because that would be a good way, he split the skull there, so an eyeball could certainly come out.
Right.
And I think that would, for in my eyes, is probably the most likely one.
Okay. And also, if Paul is dead, as you did suggest, This one is a interesting question, and maybe it's because the police didn't find him. Who knows? But why was he left off of the body count in the news report that Edna was watching?
I do believe that it was because they had not found his. I mean, it was like that was that night,
Right.
and they had yet to find him. They knew he was supposed to be there somewhere,
Okay.
but he was unaccounted for. So they didn't have like body parts or blood of his, and they didn't have his body. So they had everyone else's bodies except
Right.
for his. So they didn't at that point know exactly where he was or what had happened to him.
Okay. Sounds good. And then we already discussed the potential rape of Jason and Chris. You went into that. So as we discussed with the first Friday the 13th section, where we discussed about Jason pulling Alice under and that being all a dream. What are your theories about Mrs. Voorhees pulling Chris into the water? Was that a dream also, or was that reality?
Yes, I that one definitely is a dream sequence, but I think I wouldn't categorize it a dream sequence. The dream sequence in part one, Alice was literally like had fallen asleep
Right.
in the canoe there, so it was literally a dream sequence. This one, Chris Higgins was losing her mind. I mean, she had snapped. She laughed in the back of that police car all the way out of there.
Yeah.
And like she thought she saw Jason running out. I don't know. She had lost her mind at that point. Someone else had asked me. They're like, well, how would it be? Why did she have her head back on? And how would she know what Pamela looked like if she'd never seen her?
Right.
And actually, it's just when the murders happened, it was all over the newspapers that it was Pamela Voorhees who did it. So she saw her then, and the pictures that she saw her, obviously she had her head on,
Right.
and and so it wasn't the headless Pamela. It wasn't a real one. It wasn't even a dream sequence. It was more of a schizophrenic hallucination or something.
Okay.
She had just snapped and went bananas.
Right. That makes perfect sense. So I have 3 questions for Friday the 13th, part 4 of the final chapter, and then we'll continue off where you wanted to go with the story of Jason. This one, me and Greg were kind of discussing. We kind of came to the conclusion that he might have ran off, but we don't really know. But what is the fate of Gordon?
Oh, Gordon. Yeah, I think, honestly, that pup jumped out that window and never stopped running until someone way down, probably ended up at the dog pound
Right.
or was taken in by another family once it felt it was out of the danger zone. Because it certainly sensed what was going on.
Right.
So, yeah, I tend to believe that Gordon took off. The same with Muffin, because we did see her at the end, and then
Right.
everyone was like, she at the very, very, very end. And I'm like, they probably got her in the back of a police car or something,
Yeah, that makes sense. So what are your theories on Rob's knowledge of Jason and having the newspaper articles about him? We know that Jason killed Rob's sister Sandra, but what is your theory about all of that?
Well, it's kind of funny how they did it in the reboot. They kind of made that a major character in there, but I liked it. He was looking for his sister, and I think that somehow or another he started to buy into this, or at least become suspicious of this whole Jason thing and what was going on there.
Right.
And came to find her. Unfortunately, he did.
Yeah.
He found Jason anyway.
Exactly. And the last one I have for part 4 before we continue with where you left off. So obviously Mrs. Jarvis's death was also off screen. In a extended scene of the ending of part 4, we see Trish having apparently a dream of Mrs. Jarvis's body being in the bathtub. Yeah. So do you have an idea of how Mrs. Jarvis died?
Well, I guess really there's 2 ways to look at that, because now was she having some sort of a dream sequence?
Right.
Or if I'm not mistaken, I want to say the water was bloody.
Right.
So if so, I would imagine probably a slit neck or a good stabbing.
Sounds good. So the floor is yours. Take off with part 4.
Okay, so here's where I explain why Roy Burns is not just some random character.
Sounds good. This is going to go right into our part 5 discussion because that's my very first question.
Okay, so as I told you early on, when Elias and Pamela had a baby, Elias accused her of having an affair.
Right.
Well, she was. She was having an affair with a young med student named Roy. Anyway, so Jason is Roy's biological baby. Now, bear with me here.
Okay.
So, Roy Burns is kind of a ladies' man. You know, he likes the ladies, but he's also very selfish and has seriously unrealistic expectations of relationships and family life. So, so many years ago, he had an affair with a married woman, Pamela. Pamela got pregnant by Roy. They were going to run off together. They had plans. Then she had the baby. Or they had plans to run off when she had the baby. Well, when she did and Roy saw it, and he saw the hideous deformity, he walked out of her life forever.
Okay.
See, Roy has birth defects that run in his family a lot. I mean, a lot of birth defects. And he is terribly embarrassed by it. Some people say that the Burns they have bad genes in that family line. Well, Roy's sister was deformed and needed help all the time. And he fucking resented this. He hated her for that because she was not only having to do all the stuff for her, but he was so humiliated and embarrassed by all this that he swore he would never, ever, ever have a family like that. He would have the perfect family. So when he saw Jason was born all deformed and messed up. Now, see, Elias was not deformed at all.
Right.
Jason was deformed. Elias had his face beaten in. If you look at him jump through that window at the end, you can see a whole side of his face is like bubbly burned. And then he's got the eye socket crushed down and teeth missing and shit, and which was totally different than this guy. But anyway, so he wanted the perfect life, and when he saw Jason, he was out. He's like, "Fuck that, I'm gone." So he ended up meeting another woman. They fell in love. They got married, and they had a child that, by all appearances, is normal. So it took a few years to find out that this kid has serious mental defects. Well, Roy began to he hated it. He hated it. And so he kept trying to get the wife to put him in a home. And she wouldn't. And then she ended up passing away under what some people say is mysterious circumstances. But then the boy Joey was dumped into the state, and he ended up at Pinehurst. So Joey and Jason are half brothers. They're both Roy's kids. Now, Roy, this is why Roy chose to kill as Jason, because Roy knew that Jason was his kid, and all along the ledges. Now, Roy has been in every single ambulance. The one that fucking at the end of part 1, and the end of part 2, the end of part 3, the end of part 4. Roy was with all those groups of people. So not only does he know that his son is Jason, but no one else knows. He would never tell anybody. It was embarrassing.
Right.
But only the police would know Jason's MO more than him. He is privy to more inside information than anyone other than the police themselves. So that's why he could emulate Jason's killings so good. He was at every scene, and he knew how everything happened, what weapons he used and how he did it. And then another small a small thing to do with Roy is that the chevrons or whatever on the mask were blue.
Right.
Those were because he had two sons. One was dead to him, the other one was dead.
Interesting. It's very interesting.
And then obviously, okay, there's more to it. There's a lot more to it because I'm still, it's work in progress. But back when Pamela first thought she had killed Elias, and then she got a job at the camp. Well, now that she couldn't tell anybody, she just kind of, they didn't have any friends, they didn't talk to a lot of people or whatever, and like I said, he didn't work at the same place every day, so they didn't have a lot of people asking about him. So, as a single mom now, she had no means of taking care of Jason. So, she got the job at the camp there, and she rented her cabin out while she worked at the camp. Now, one of the people that rented it was a professor and his wife. And they had just come back from some big trip and wanted a nice place to do some work, maybe listen to a few tapes and incantations. And so here I'm putting the Evil Dead cabin was actually the Voorhees cabin. After Pamela was dead, it got left to like her brother, who left it to his fucking nephew Ash Williams or whatever. I'm not sure if I'm going all the way there, but then it ties into part 6. Okay. And that whole fucking lightning resurrection deadite type of thing, because there's a lot of things out there. Is Jason a deadite? And so with this theory of mine, it would also touch on the Evil Dead knife that's in part 9, and also the crate from Creepshow is in part 9. And this Professor Nobi traveled all around the world and collected rare antiquities. So I'm assuming that if he did not collect that crate, that it came from the same university that he had all his collected stuff at. So the Deadites and the Evil Dead series really do tie in, especially due to the dagger and that kind of thing. So what I've been working on, like I said, is just the movies themselves, fixing the timelines with ignoring all other, and trying to make it work.
Right.
That's about where I'm at so far. I mean, there are things I want to explore. Like, I'd like to explore maybe a little more about the origin of Tina. Okay. Where she come from, who was her father? What did he do? Who was he in the grand scheme of things? Did that guy have an affair with another lady? And is that Tommy's dad? No, I don't know. There's a lot to work on, but I'm slowly but surely, and it's cool because I'll get some stuff down really well, and then someone will say, "Well, what about this?"
Do you have an idea who Tommy's dad is?
I do not.
Okay.
Do not. I see the thing. The only reason why it's really getting me thinking about Tommy's dad is because of the relationship between Tommy and Jason.
Right.
It's almost as if there's something more there.
Okay. All right. Before I continue,
maybe it's Roy.
Maybe. Before I go into more questions in that and continue, I did have a question about where do you get your theories from? Like, how do you piece these all together?
Just watching it. Just watching the movies and watching the movies and watching the movies, and then I, like so many other franchise fans, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense here. You can't have this and this at the same time. Right. Well, unless this, and so I fix it. Unless this happens, then okay. Right. And I had looked it up and everything, and no one has this theory but me. Zero. Right. I also have another conspiracy theory DB Cooper thing I have up my sleeve that no one's got yet, but nice. I'll get that one some other time.
Nice. So to continue on with the part 5 questions I got, so we see at the end of part 5, they have Roy's wallet, and it has a recent picture of Joey of what he looks like. So how does he have a recent picture if he hasn't seen him for years?
Oh, see, he has been actually watching him,
Okay.
spying on him from afar, much in the same way that he kept tabs with Jason's murders.
Okay.
See, while he was a selfish prick and swore up and down he would never be stuck in a family with a disabled person again, it was still his son.
Right.
So he still, he didn't want anybody to know, but he would, his fatherly side would kick in from time to time, and he'd take a picture or get some information without anybody knowing,
Right.
Didn't want anybody to know that he cared or that was his son or anything.
Right.
And
So
I think that's why he was visibly upset when the other ambulance driver was like, "Come on, man," and he's got that weird ass look on his face.
yeah.
When he discovers it's his kid.
So if Roy loved his son, I wouldn't say love, but if he was so upset about Joey's death and was moved by it that he had to go on this mass murder spree, why didn't he kill the man that was responsible for Joey's death, Victor?
Yeah, that is a good question, but I think it's honestly, I think what it is there is it wasn't so much that he was putting a blame on an individual. He had so much guilt over abandoning his son just because he had a deformity that came from his father.
Right.
That, he was devastated by that, which made him feel like a real piece of shit. And then so he decided just to do it. He wanted revenge. He wanted whatever. And so he just decided to dress up like his other son.
Okay.
Who had just recently been killed, and decided just to kill everyone. And I think I don't think he even expected to get away. I think he was just going to keep killing until someone killed him.
I got ya. So, when Mayor Cobb states that Jason is cremated, this is obviously not true because we see Jason buried in Part 6. So, any theories on why everyone thinks that Jason is cremated when he's actually buried?
I think it was a cover-up story.
Okay.
By the mayor and those. For one, they didn't want anybody trying to dig up Jason.
Right.
And they also didn't want, their cemetery would be just probably flooded with visitors all the time, and all the, just be a big mess and a bunch of trouble. So if we just say we cremated him, poof, he's gone, his body isn't anywhere for anyone to go view, or and he can be just gone like dust in the wind.
Yes, that makes sense. So any theories on the ending of Part 5 when Tommy is seen wearing the hockey mask, holding up a knife behind Pam? Did she die, survive, or is it all a dream?
Boy, oh boy, yeah. See, now that's a good one because there's so many of these either real or false dream sequence type things that go on in this franchise, But I believe originally, because I saw Part 3
right
on opening night in the theater in 3D, and since then I have seen every single Friday the 13th that's ever come out on opening night in the theater.
Okay.
So by the time 5 ended, I really felt as though they were looking to pass the torch, and they were going to make Tommy the new Jason. But then you come in with the next one, and the next guy kind of ignores that. So I would just have to go, now that the other movies have come out, I think that by default it makes that a dream sequence.
Okay.
Or remember when Tommy kept seeing Jason in the mirror and shit, he kept having to pop those pills.
Right.
So it was either another one of those psychotic induced hallucinations or a dream sequence.
Okay, sounds good. So Part 6, Jason Lives. One thing I've noticed, and I don't know how true it is that Tommy and Hawes are seen in the beginning, escaping, I guess, the asylum or the mental institution that they were at. and they're driving in a truck. That truck to me looks really familiar, and it looks to me like it's Pam's truck from Part 5. Any theories?
Oh, you know what? I will have to relook at that, but I did think that it did look familiar, and it is very possible they could have used. I mean, if it's the same film company, everything could have used it up.
Right.
I'd have to take a look at that again, because that would actually be interesting in more than one way. Obviously, you have the a little pop-up video thing there, but also, as I was talking about the Evil Dead, that Sam Raimi uses that yellow car in like almost every one of his movies.
Right.
From Spider-Man to whatever, and so it would be kind of funny if there was a multiple used car in the Friday the 13th series that may or may not have Evil Dead ties.
That's a good idea. That's a good point. So here's a question me and Greg actually concocted together. We were discussing this and we didn't understand it. But any theories on why Jason killed Paula? Because he legitimately had his sights set on killing her, but she didn't do anything wrong according to and quote unquote horror movie rules.
Yes, no, she's one of my favorites. I found her adorable, and in fact, I had talked to him about this once before.
Okay.
That she was literally innocent, but there's throughout the franchise, there's a lot of actually innocent girls. I can't think of what was the one? I think it was 7. He had kind of a short, a little bit rounder faced girl, and she tried to put makeup on.
Yeah, Maddie.
Yeah, I don't think she had any sex or anything either.
Right.
Or did any drugs or whatever, So I think once you're in that group of people that are there, you are guilty by association.
Makes sense. And side note, Carrie Noonan, who played Paula, she was actually my teacher when I went to Champlain College.
Wow!
Yes.
How cool is that?
Yes. She actually stated in the very beginning of class. She goes, she said, I know everybody's probably looking at me as their teacher, and they probably knew the name was familiar if you're a Friday the 13th fan. Yes, I was in the 6th Friday the 13th. But in this class, we have one rule: do not discuss Friday the 13th because I do not want you getting distracted from any of your work.
All right.
Yep. It was very.
Did she pass away?
She's still alive. I actually, I had her a couple years ago.
I was thinking of Brenda.
Yeah, Brenda. Laurie Bartram. Yeah, she was in the first one. She passed away.
Yeah.
I think she had cancer. The same thing with Melissa from Part 7. I heard she passed away too.
Oh, the terrible girl.
The bitchy blonde with the pearls.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yep, she passed
played
away.
A really good part of a horrible person.
She really did. Let's see, what do I got here? Okay, so we don't see Paula's corpse in this movie, even though she was definitely hacked up and there was an insane amount of blood in that room. So any theories on what Jason might have done to her body?
Well, I know he splattered her in that room for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird thing with Jason, because he does like to hide a lot of bodies.
Right.
In interesting places. Others, he'll just leave right where they're at. But like to chop the guy walking on his hands in half and then put him up in the rafters,
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that's the child in him or something. Hide and go seek.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe she was even like, because there was an insane amount of blood. There might not even been nothing left of her.
Yeah.
At that point. Let's see. So this is the first Friday the 13th film that had children at the camp. So any theories on why Jason never attempted to kill the kids? Because he tried to kill Tommy in Part 4, but why not any of the kids in this movie?
Well, I think, again, I'm going to go with the vagrant and the muffin theory here.
Okay.
Not only were they insignificant, like he looked at that one little girl.
Yeah.
That was awake, and he looked her right in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he considered killing her.
Right.
But then he was so focused on the other people already. If they were an adult or a teen, they would have got slaughtered along the way. But
right.
Because he also murdered a baby in the womb when he killed Debbie.
Debbie. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think it was. I maybe even considered it, and then saw somebody out the window and went after them.
That's a good point. It's a good point. So the last question I got for part 6 is the theories on Martin the caretaker. Was he paid by Elias to tend to Jason's grave and to take care of it, or what's the theory about him?
No. Well, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't think that he was paid or anything. I think he was just a caretaker there, and then he was in charge of keeping the cemetery clean and taken care of, and probably burying bodies. And then when some farthead dug up the body there, he had to bury it again.
Yep, and apparently it wasn't Jason getting reburied.
Of entertainment.
Yep, it wasn't Jason being reburied though. It was poor Alan Hawes.
Yep.
So I know you discussed this a little bit. I'm still going to ask the question because I know you said you're still looking into it. But with part 7, the new blood now, when we first see Tina as a little girl, she has telekinetic powers. Do you have any theories on how she first developed these type of powers?
Well, honestly, it's something I'm thinking about, because to me, it's not random.
Right.
Whether she developed them maybe earlier on, because they were at their little cabin.
Yeah.
So who knows how they could have been coming to that cabin since she was a baby.
Yeah.
Now you have all the murders that occurred here, and if the Evil Dead Deadites, any of that kind of stuff is involved at all, she could have picked something up. I think there's something there. And to touch on your point back there about not killing the little girl, I think for one, Jason remembers being the child in the thing, and it's the counselors he's after. But what were we just talking about?
About Tina developing the powers.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it just seems too coincidental. There's got to be some sort of connection, and I'm kind of looking into it and seeing what I can make sense.
Right.
Does she get it from her father? Say, well, who was her father?
Right. Because we don't know much about him.
To somebody, or
right.
Yeah, and then again, too, Tommy's father, who is just missing from the thing, and he's got this connection with Jason that's unlike the other kids.
Right.
So there's something there, and I don't know, and shit, it could even be Roy Burns, but that would get him around a little too much. But there's something there.
Right.
And, still got to work on that a little bit, but
okay. I'm gonna jump back to part 1 again, about where Mrs. Voorhees says that Jason drowned when those two young counselors were making love. Was this actually true then? Because it seems like a lot of it isn't adding up with that part.
Well, what do you mean?
Did he really drown when those two young people those two counselors were making love? Or was he on their watch? Because when you said about Jason being at going out at night when nobody was looking.
Yeah.
So
so that's just where those two counselors should have been in their cabins.
Right.
With the kids who were asleep. Now, since the kids were asleep or whatever, they or wait, no, was this going on while they were playing the campfire songs?
It was in 1957 when Jason drowned, I believe.
Oh, yeah. So the campfire songs was the next. Yeah. So, so those people should have been in their cabins. Now, one of those two, whether I don't know if it was the boy or the girl, I would assume it was the boy, because you'd have the girl in the girl's cabin, the boy in the boy's cabin. That boy is the one that would have been able to catch Jason sneaking out.
Okay.
But since he was out and off screwing around, Jason was able to just slip out the door and go figure it out. And the reason why Jason figured this out is because these two were meeting on a regular basis, nightly. And so when Jason decided that he was going to prove that he could do this stupid swimming thing, that people wouldn't give him a chance or didn't think he could do good enough, he saw his chance.
All right.
So he'd be ready for the next challenge and be able to show him that he could do it.
Right. Now, the counselors that were making love when Jason drowned, were they the ones that were killed by Mrs. Voorhees a year later, Barry and Claudette?
Now, that one I'm not really sure, because if you'd have to have the exact same two coming back and then hooking up again.
Yeah.
I never really got the feeling that was those counselors. I think those counselors were fired.
Okay.
I don't think they were invited back, and I think these two counselors were the first people that were caught making love after this had happened, and they got the punishment that the other two
should have got, but
deserved.
Didn't. Exactly. Makes sense. So back to part 7. So we know that Tina's family was at Camp Crystal Lake when she was a kid. Because we see Tina's dream about her killing her father with the telekinetic powers.
Yeah.
So Tina never, or her family, never encountered the wrath of either Elias or Jason or Mrs. Voorhees. Was Jason still a boy thought to have been drowned in the lake at the time? And also, why didn't either Jason, Elias, or Mrs. Voorhees, whoever was the one around the time doing all the killings, why didn't they come after that family?
Okay, so my thoughts on that are, Jason, when he drowned in 1957,
right?
That's when Elias found him.
Okay.
So by 1980, he's grown into that green shirt wearing big bald fella that we all know and love. Yeah. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
So then, why didn't anyone? Who was the killer? I guess at the time that Tina was at the camp, her family. Would it be Jason or Mrs. Voorhees?
Well, Tina and those guys, they weren't actually at the camp.
Okay.
Right? They had their own cabin or whatever. They were on Crystal Lake.
Okay.
But Crystal Lake is huge. Now, anyone near Camp Blood gets murdered. And then, of course, you had the shack across the way, which the only reason why all the people in Part 2 got killed, because they were the nearest to them. And then once Elias was killed, then Jason kind of expanded his territory a little bit and ended up at Harold and Edna's store to start. And on his way to Higgins Haven.
Right.
But, as far as the Tina, I don't know. I'm sure there were multitudes of other cabin owners and that kind of thing that came and went, not even knowing what was going on, and
right.
They just didn't happen to cross the wrong area, or Jason didn't end up for some reason in their area.
Okay. And I'm going to throw in another bonus question, because just talking to you keeps giving me different questions that I didn't even add. So we know about Camp Crystal Lake. We know that vicinity, New Jersey and all that stuff. Where is Packanack Lodge? That's obviously really close. And then where is Higgins Haven from it? Where are they all located?
Well, Crystal Lake's pretty big.
Okay.
So I've actually seen a map where they have everything in the hospital and all that. But I would have to say that, so you got Part 2 is probably a little closer to Higgins Haven than, because I can't remember. There's one thing I can't remember here. The guy and the gal in Part 2, in fact, the gal that was the sister that got killed, and the guy, hey, asshole, that's my truck.
Oh, Max, and, not Max, he was the tow truck driver, Sandra and Jeff.
Yes. So when they went out in the woods, and they found that hackety hacked up dog or whatever.
Right.
They had just stepped over a barrier of some sort, a fence.
Right.
Saying no trespassing or something?
Yes.
Now, if that is not directly to Camp Crystal Lake, then that is something maybe that Elias put up.
Okay.
A sign that he found and whatever, but yeah, I was just thinking about that. This is what I love, is come up with little questions and then you slowly get them answered. And then, 'cause I'm working on a book, I want to get this all dialed in and dialed out, and then as part of the book too, I will literally be exploring part 2 and part 3, but from a different perspective, because it'll be Jason following Elias and watching him murder people.
Right.
And learning. But, yeah. A lot to fix there.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is so specific. This is so in depth. Like it goes into a very like into a spot that there's so much to explore, and it's not something you can do overnight. It's There's just so much depth to this whole story and this whole franchise.
Yep.
So the last question I have then regarding part 7 is, at the end of the movie, Jason is dragged underneath Camp Crystal Lake by Tina's father, after Tina resurrects him. Was this reality, or was this a dream?
Now, I just recently saw what was supposed to happen.
Okay.
I can't remember what it was, but they ended up going, no, that's too much. Just have her dad grab her.
Okay.
So the dad grabbing, so we had dream sequence in 1, a non-dream sequence in 2, a schizophrenic hallucination in 3, I believe a schizophrenic hallucination in 5. And so, I don't know, did she, I feel like she manifested something to whether her power looked to Jason as her father, or that's how it manifested itself, or whatever, to pull him down, and in the back of her mind, maybe because she had killed her father, that now somehow she made him the hero. Or that's an interesting one. Yeah, that's just kind of the way I think about it. I think I feel like it was not a dream sequence, but it could have been a dream sequence for Jason.
Okay.
Like her powers manifested, and that was like he was seeing the dad pull him down, when it was actually her using her powers, and also using the powers the same way she did on her dad.
Right.
And so that was kind of together in the same, and then it manifested to Jason as kind of a dream sequence, and when he actually was just, everything crumbled and fell in on top of him, but he...
Right. But don't forget also, Tina did say dad, so it was like she saw him too.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like maybe he... see, this is where... Okay, so... This could be having to do with the Deadites.
Okay.
From the Evil Dead franchise, or it could simply explain that he has whatever she has.
That's a good point.
And when she basically drowned him or whatever, he wasn't going to use his powers against his daughter.
Okay.
And he was just in there beating the mom. He felt he deserved it. I'm sorry, honey. That's all he was saying. As they went down and all that. So
yeah,
maybe it was his spirit just manifested, and because if he does have some sort, and again, I'm these powers aren't just random. You just don't have some random telekinesis person that ends up there to face Jason. So I tend to think that there's definitely more to this story, and I do want to explore more of her origin.
Okay.
And maybe even now her father, because she probably gets it from her father.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he doesn't deal with it very well, or know how to deal with it very well. So that's why he's kind of abusive and takes it out on his wife.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely want to have you on again once you get that whole theory and story situated as well, because this film and this story itself is one that is very fascinating to me.
Well, I try to tell people about it, and most of the time they're like, no way, man, no way. And you literally have to tell them all of these little details.
Right.
And then it's like, well, that actually makes sense,
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at the basic thing alone.
Right.
You had part 2 happen in all those murders. Well, during that time, and even possibly a couple of years before that time, Jason was wearing the green shirt, the light slacks, bald face, baby, no facial hair, as told by Chris Higgins. And at the same time, the other dude's running around in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it all just makes sense. And then what's kind of cool about it, if my theory, if we went with my theory,
right,
it would be a family affair.
Okay.
Part 1, mommy killed. Part 2, daddy killed. Part 3 on, son kills.
That's a good point.
It's like a family tradition.
Yeah, I mean, who needs Christmas family traditions when you have murdering, traditions?
Mm-hmm. Lost his mother after part 1, lost his father after part 2.
Yep. Yeah.
And then finally got killed in 4 and brought back due to
yes.
Because I actually did a little tiny video, and it was Ash Williams in the basement of the cabin, and he turns on the tape, and whatever it is, and then showed the lightning strike Jason's
nice
thing there where Tommy had stuck it in there.
Nice.
And made it so it had something to do with that. But yeah, definitely they tie in because it's in part 9. They literally have the dagger used in Evil Dead, and
yep.
So they put it in there.
Right.
We gotta deal with it.
So
that's what
go ahead.
I think that explains why Jason came back, undead.
Right.
And in part 6, why he came back and killed as an unkillable
zombie. Yeah.
Killing machine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So I have a lot of questions for Party. Oh boy, Party. The burning question I have for Party is, how can the cruise ship go from Crystal Lake to New York? First off, it's a super quick drive or a train ride from Jersey to New York City. Secondly, it is impossible to get out of a lake with a huge cruise ship and go to a harbor in New York City. So can you please make this thing that does not make sense make sense?
Okay, so what we have is Crystal Lake, right?
Yes.
And then we got a small little river that leads off to the ocean there.
Right.
But on that river, down that river a little bit, towards the thing, it widens up, and they have a little port there. So It's still considered in the Crystal Lake area, but it's actually down the river off of the lake. It's almost a little bay of its own, and so it's technically connected, but it's not technically in. Well, I guess it would have to be, because what they say is that there's a goddamn little river that goes from the lake there out to the ocean. And I was going to say the other thing, but then they literally, when they took off, the anchor is what brought Jason. So they're sitting right on top of Jason. So they parked right out front of Tina's place.
Right.
So apparently, yeah, somewhere on that lake leads out to it wasn't exactly a cruise ship, but it was a big goddamn boat.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a little, but I guess it's there. There's a little canal there.
Okay.
So they say.
Go ahead.
What's that?
Oh, I was gonna say, is the ship that everybody is on the same ship that Jim and Susie died on?
Jim and Susie, which
they were the very first deaths when Jason got resurrected by electricity with the anchor. The one guy had his intestines ripped out with the spirit gun, and the girl was hiding in the thing.
Yes. Yep, that was that little boat.
That's the same exact boat. Interesting. That is crazy.
Yep,
That's such a.
I guess he probably stashed those bodies, and then. I think they found one of them later.
Maybe they might have. I have to go back. I haven't really paid attention much to that movie, but I really want to dive into that one and check more into it. Let's see. So, what theories do you have on why all the students were left in one room to drown when they could have just went with Colleen to find everybody else and escaped? I mean, probably self-explanatory, but I thought I'd ask it.
Yeah, I just, that's just one of those stupid crowds of people that should have listened to the smart one.
Yeah. So here's one that I know me and Greg were trying to discuss a little bit, and Greg told me to ask you for the answer. Why does Rennie see and hallucinate about a young Jason? And any theories on how Jason was pulling young Jason was pulling Rennie under the water when Charles was teaching her how to swim?
Okay, now the weirdest part about this is, or what doesn't match up, is Jason would not have been a boy at the time he was teaching her to swim.
Right.
So, since maybe his, maybe his spirit is in, or there's an evil in there that manifests, itself as the lake dwelling Jason.
Right.
I don't know, because like in the end of 8-2, when he turned into a little goober kid and was like,
Yeah.
"Mommy," and like he finally says something, and that's what it is. Are you
Yeah.
serious? But yeah. So there's that. That is an interesting question. Again, that could just be. Did Rennie say specifically that there was a boy in the lake trying to pull her down, or did it just show that? Because she could have been panicking
Because she couldn't swim.
Yes, and then imagining the worst. And of course, everybody knows the legend of the boy in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think it would be. It was just her fear of the water and the fear of the legend of the boy in the lake, because all the young kids from the camps around there, they all know about that legend, and how kids are.
Yes.
And so her fear of drowning was also her fear of being grabbed by the haunted boy in the lake.
So this one might be a little self-explanatory. You might not know nothing about it, but we see the Irish cop get killed off screen in an alley. Do you know what happened to him? Like how he got killed? Any theories behind it?
You know what? I honestly don't remember that one.
Okay, I would think
I got to rewatch that one myself.
Yeah, I think what might have happened. This is my thought on it. Was he was on the radio when he got dragged off by Jason into the alley. This is right when they seen what's his name, VC Dupree's character, the boxing guy, Julius's head.
Yeah.
So maybe Jason used the radio that broke, that's the wiring that snapped off, maybe to strangle him.
Well, that could be.
That's what I was thinking. I just wanted to see if your thoughts matched possibly with mine.
Yeah, it could very well be. Or I mean, he also likes to crush heads.
Yes, that is true too. Any theories on why Jason is seen or teleporting to multiple locations when he's going to kill Eva in the dance room?
Well, honestly, now he's dead.
Yeah.
So I would say that is just a supernatural element. It seems as though after he got killed, he came out, and he's kind of your unstoppable thing. But it's almost like he's getting a little better each time. He's
Right.
So perhaps he developed. Because now he's purely supernatural. I mean, he is dead, and if he has anything to do with any kind of Evil Dead stuff.
That's true. Any theories on why or how the sewers of New York City flood with toxic waste every night at midnight?
Yes, the New York citizens.
I just figured I would throw that in there because
vomit and feces off the street, and that's what's rolling down there.
And this is the last question I have for part 8. The end of the movie, I like to call Jason, when we see him unmasked, the Muppet who takes New York City. The Muppets who take New York. He is then, I guess, burned alive or whatever with a river of toxic waste that flooded the sewers. But then he turns into a little boy. Any idea how this happened? Dream or what is it?
Oh, boy. That one is kind of weird because it's either the standard dream sequence, or that would be like Jason dying and then he turned into his original form before he would die. But I don't feel like it. I feel like it was more of a hallucination of something, because it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
Of course, I guess if they were going to end it right there forever, it could have been. But yeah, that pumpkinhead looking Jason, I didn't care for that one much.
Yeah.
And then you figure, well, okay, then how the hell did he get back to the camp?
Right.
And so all I can say is I think he made his way back to the ship.
Yeah.
But I don't know why the ship would go back there after all that.
That is true, too. I think the ship didn't even sink.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know how he ended up getting back to Jason Goes to Hell, the camp, and Jason Goes to Hell. But speaking of Jason Goes to Hell... Huh?
He could have walked underwater for all we know.
Yeah, that's true. It wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah.
So in Jason Goes to Hell, any theories on why on Jason's heart and how it possessed the person, specifically the coroner who ate it, become possessed with that spirit of Jason?
Well, this threw me off at first. At first I didn't like it. Then I actually found out what Adam Marcus had to deal with and what they were telling him they wanted.
Right.
Such as get rid of the mask.
Yes.
I mean, how'd you like to go in and direct a Friday the 13th movie and then tell them, they tell you just get rid of the mask. It's like, that's kind of the thing. But so the body transfer thing was definitely different. I think that's where it's evolving more towards the Deadite stuff again.
Right.
You got the big worm thing in them. You got the you got the Evil Dead knife, and then you had the crate downstairs in the basement or whatever with that creature in it.
Yeah.
So I could see all kinds of weird ass supernatural crap going on in this one area, and I believe it all has to do with the Deadites.
Okay. Once
they blew Jason up entirely, and then the one guy got possessed to eat the heart.
Right. And before we continue on, for those people that are listening that don't know what the Deadites are, could you explain what they are?
Okay. So in the Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, the Deadites are what Ash Williams inadvertently summons from the forests. And, they're the flying demon zombie people that always want your soul. And, so that's the bad monsters from the Evil Dead series.
Okay. So more about the dagger and even the role I can't even pronounce it that well, Necronomicon played. How did that play in Jason's life?
Well, the one theory that I have is that she rented out the cabin to Professor Noby. So that whole cabin from the Evil Dead was actually the Voorhees cabin that they all used to live in until she moved, until she was beheaded.
Right.
And then Jason had disappeared. So those incantations being done in her cabin, I want to say, so when she would go to the camp and work at the camp, she would rent out the cabin for extra money because she needed it.
Right.
Especially without Elias' income. Well, she didn't rent it out the last summer and then got killed. Like, she rented it out, to Professor Noby and them, and then they were gone like they were supposed to be when she got back. And then they're there for like another summer or whatever, and then I went back to the camp. And so that he had unlocked, had read the Necronomicon, and unleashed the evil of the forest. But the next summer that they were there, they never found that. They never found the tape. They never found it. So they actually never summoned it by accident, but it was there. So there's somehow that evil ties into them living amongst the evil. It did have an effect on them, but a different effect than if you would have read the Necronomicon and summoned the demons themselves.
All right.
This was a longer, slower process, kind of like slow cooking.
Okay. Sounds good. So at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, we see Freddy Krueger's glove come out of the ground and drag Jason's mask straight to hell. Obviously, it was supposed to be a setup for Freddy versus Jason, but we know where all that stood, and years later we got that. But any theories do you have outside of making Freddy versus Jason? Do you have on why Freddy was so interested on bringing Jason to hell?
Well, I think more that it wasn't Freddy bringing Jason to hell. It was hell sent Freddy to bring Jason.
Okay.
And only because, he's very highly ranked down there.
Yeah.
He's Freddy Krueger, and he's one of their best. So he sends one of the best to get one of the best.
Right.
And, that's just kind of the way I look at it. It's like, had it been Freddy, it would have been Jason sent up to get him or whatever.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to skip over Jason X for now. I'll go back to that. I only have 2 questions for Freddy versus Jason, but since we're talking about Freddy Krueger, being sent to bring Jason to hell, I figure it would be appropriate to go right into Freddy versus Jason. And so despite what is being shown in the beginning of the movie, any theories on how Jason was resurrected and how he got out of hell to end up into Springwood?
Okay, so they had so the very I'm trying to picture the very, very beginning. Now we know that they sent Freddy they sent Jason to go kill.
Mm-hmm.
So they would think it was Freddy. Bring up Freddy's name, so that would bring him back to life, and they would all remember him. What was your question again?
So how did Jason end up getting out of hell and end up in Springwood, Ohio?
Oh, okay. Well, I just think that Jason belongs on Earth. He belongs at Crystal Lake.
Okay.
That's just where they want him. That's his domain.
All right.
So I think he'll end up there, for all times.
Right. So here's an interesting question a lot of people don't think makes sense. How did they get from Springwood, Ohio to Camp Crystal Lake in record time? And I don't think they sped because I still think speeding they wouldn't get there that quickly.
Yeah, is that what it's in the van?
I think they had the van, yeah.
Yeah. That was they got some really good shortcuts over there.
Yeah, they must, right? So
time-lapse photography. Yeah.
So here is the burning question. Everybody has their difference in opinions. I want the main man himself, the theorist, Troy Oelke, to help me with this one. Freddy or Jason, who won?
Jason.
Jason. That's my exact thought. Freddy might be winking at the camera,
because,
but...
I mean, what you did have is that, they had Freddy wink there at the end. But,
yeah.
That was Freddy's head that had just been chopped up by Jason, who was fully,
Right.
He won that round. I mean, there's definitely no Freddy dead, but Jason won that for sure.
Right. So going now back to Jason X, and the reason why I wanted to go to skip this one at first is because of my first question on this is any theories on the timeline of Jason X. Did it come before or after Jason Goes to Hell and Freddy vs. Jason?
Oh, no matter what movie ever comes out again involving Friday the 13th,
yeah,
Jason X will be after that.
Okay, makes sense.
That's the last one because he ends up on the Earth 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
Some other planet, oh, look at that shooting star.
Right.
And, so, yeah, I think no matter what, that one is hundreds of years in the future. So,
okay. So
at some point, I guess he ends up on another planet.
Right. So thinking about the end of the movie when Jason is intercepted by Sergeant Broski and he's that shooting star, he went right into that lake in Earth 2. Is Jason still alive?
Yes.
He is?
Yep. And he's going to kill them kids that were watching him.
Sounds good.
And they're not going to know what hit them.
So, let's see. What's this question? Okay, so this is more of, I would guess, your opinion, but what is your theory on the movie itself? Was it a pivotal part of the franchise that meshes with the original storyline of Friday the 13th?
As far as Jason X,
Yeah.
well, that's a tough one because, like I said, no matter what, we have our ending story.
Right.
No matter we make 30 more movies, we know the end now.
Right.
But to me, it's really just the jumping of the shark when you go to space, man.
Yep.
Leprechaun in space.
That's true.
When's Freddy going to space? Hellraiser in space. It's like, I've done everything I can on this planet.
That is true.
I mean, I think they tried to make it cool, which honestly, it had some humorous parts. I thought the frozen face smash on the encounter was one of the coolest deaths in the franchise. I liked the holographic, third sleeping bag killing. I mean, it had its elements, but again, I'm never crazy about Ghost to Space.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Because you can't. I mean, if you're going to do a space one, I think you would have to do it seriously scary,
right,
like Alien or something. You can't be campy, part fun, part funny in space. Cause it just, I don't know. You do it in the woods because you've got fucking 9 other movies that have been filmed before you in the woods. Of course, you're gonna. That's what I love about Part 6. They kind of poke fun at themselves a little bit, And
right.
they got that old Frankenstein thing.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
Yes, I agree. The last question I got for Jason X. What are your theories on Jason being captured in the opening of the movie? Like, how was he captured and taken to this research facility?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember. Okay. I'm pretty sure they just had him. Much like the beginning of 9, they set up more or less a trap, and I'm trying to think here in 10. Let's see. We're talking about X, right?
Yes.
Yeah, when he's frozen in
the cryogenic chamber.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Okay, now wait a minute. Now this is one where they had him chained up.
Yes, he was
room,
chained
right?
first. Yes, before he was frozen.
Okay,
yes.
So the government finally got him, and I think they were looking to make him into some kind of weapon, the way the government does.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he broke loose, and the rest is intergalactic history.
Right, exactly. So I have 2 more sections. I have the 2009 and then a miscellaneous, which is about the franchise as a whole. The 2009, I have 4 questions. The first one is, in the beginning, and you might have answered these. I'm just going to go through them, and if you answer them, you could even just give a brief overview. In the beginning of the movie, Jason witnessed Pamela's death. We know Jason never did drown, but what theories do you have on Jason watching her get decapitated but not reveal himself as alive to her when he was right there the entire time?
Okay, so like I said, I believe that he drowned and was picked up and raised by Elias. And
right.
He was actually home asleep. He did not, in fact, see the beheading, but Elias did. Elias witnessed it and then immediately made his way around the lake there to try to get Alice, but she was already gone.
Okay.
And,
so
I think Jason didn't even see it.
Okay, so why did they show Jason be the one to see it then?
What's that?
Then why was like the little boy there seeing Pamela, and I believe he had the locket or whatever right after she was decapitated.
Okay. We're talking the reboot.
Yes, the reboot.
That is interesting. So they did change that a little bit, but it didn't make much sense because the kid still had no shirt on.
Right.
Like wet and shivering, and he wouldn't be there wet and shivering fucking 20 years later.
Yeah. And he wouldn't be a kid.
What I mean? Yeah, and so if he was following her around but not telling anyone about him, he would have been doing it in shorts with no shirt or shoes or whatever for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was just they're trying to jumble a bunch of story parts into a 10-second thing and just trying to put it all together because I won't. I don't consider the reboot really as a director of any of the storylines.
Okay.
I find that more having, playing off the original storylines.
Okay. And the other three questions I have really aren't about the original storyline, which is a good thing because it can get very jumbled. But before the title card is revealed with the movie's name, we saw Jason, who was going to attack Whitney with the machete, and it looked like he came down on her and killed her. What are your theories? Like, why didn't she die, even though it looked like she got sliced with the machete? Like, did he just hit the ground, or?
I think that he took that swing and he suddenly stopped because as he was swinging, he realized that looks like his mom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they put in that little bit of a Ginny thing from the part 2 in there. But I think honestly that he stopped just short of splitting her skull in two because she and then later on they show that locket or whatever.
Right. So this one more probably could be still self-explanatory. Maybe I just want to see if you have more insight on it. But Whitney's boyfriend Mike, we didn't see him get killed. We just seen the machete stabbing through his leg, and then he got drugged underneath the floorboards in the cabin. So it was an off-screen death technically. So do you know how he could have just been killed? Was it just stabbings?
I would think that. I mean, my obvious would be that he would have been just stabbed the shit out of, but. The way Jason does things, I could see him, the way he drug him down on that floor, again, either crushing his head or like folding him in half backwards like the sheriff or something like that. Something very brutal manhandling, you know what I mean?
Right. So, was the end of the movie a dream, hallucination, or reality? Because we saw Jason jump through the dock and attack Whitney. So any theories on what happened there?
Yeah, I'm going to probably just go with the dream sequence on that one.
Alrighty. Sounds good.
I mean, I would think because they wanted to do that. Now, the whole point of the original dream sequence was to surprise and shock everybody. Nobody was ready for that at all. That wasn't part of the story. I mean, it was just like, bam, holy shit. This one was like, let's do that thing they did in that other movie, too. And so not only wasn't it very shocking, I think if they were going to do some kind of shocking, it should have been way different. But, I just don't really count the reboot because I feel like they just tried to cram all the movies into one, all the storylines basically as far as they could into one.
Right, because, I mean, definitely, look, he has Elias's, sack from the second one and then the hockey mask in the second half of the movie. So, it's like they were just trying to make, all of the entire franchise into one, hour and a half long movie.
Exactly. Trying to explain everything all the way through with,
Yep.
Basically, I think it was, 1 through 3 or 1 through 4, kind of.
Right. So, some miscellaneous questions I got. Any theories on the fact that after all of the murders that happened, year after year, day after day, whenever the timeline takes place, why do people continue to go to Camp Crystal Lake to party and quote-unquote camp?
Well, I think a couple of those, as shown by the mayor, a lot of these people, so after each one, they figured that the killer was dead and gone.
Right.
Although the legend lived on. So these people, much like obviously the mayor and the mayor from Mayor Vaughn from Jobs, apparently some bathers were injured or something. It's all good now, though. The beaches will remain open. So I feel like they downplayed all those murders because no one would fucking ever come around there, and they wouldn't have any kind of money coming to that community.
Right.
And not only downplaying the murders, but I think that each time they thought it was over.
Right.
And then, they just try to kind of like keep that under wraps and blame it on this, that, or whatever thing, missing posters and, whatever. But, yeah, I don't know because normally you'd think if there's a psycho in the woods that's murdered, 70 people, that might not be the area to go camping in. I don't know.
Exactly, or even party for that matter. I mean, you see everybody going to party.
But then there's so many kids and even young adults that are like, oh, fuck that. That is horseshit. I'm going camping there right now. I'm afraid of that.
Right.
You know? And then there's other people that just say if they kept that news under wraps, at least kept it local.
Right.
So you had these kids coming in from whatever, to a couple states away to go camping in this area of the woods. I mean, I live in Oregon here, and I can go camping in the woods, and I can't tell you the history of what's happened in that woods. I don't know. I just know it's the woods. And so you could have those people out there, that haven't even heard of it yet. But usually they'll have the one guy, okay, in fact, I believe most of them haven't heard about it, because even in the reboot, you have the telling of the legend of the story. You have Paul, and in this one, you have the guy telling the story, and I think you have the other guy, like the one guy knew, he corrected him. He's like, yeah, no, he cut that bitch's head off, or whatever.
Right. And
so the two of them had heard about this supposed legend that they didn't really, believe in. But two of them had heard of it, but they didn't believe in it, and the others had never heard of it.
Right.
So I think that that's a little political move by the mayors and politicians in the area there, trying to not scare people away or create a panic or even make people from that area move.
Right.
Because most people that live there, either they knew where to go or where not to go, because the locals aren't the ones getting killed usually.
Right.
The people coming in and treading on ground they don't know about, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, any theories on Jason's mortality before he was resurrected as a zombie and officially killed in Part 4 by Tommy? And also, what theories do you have on Jason never being killed? And is there an actual way that he can be killed?
Okay, so I always felt like Jason was killed at the end of 4.
Okay.
And that up until then, he was, the kind of mongoloid that barely feels pain and is so adrenaline driven and all that, and just happened to survive most of these potentially survivable but terrible injuries he had up until the machete through the side of the eye where he slid down it on his face. That's what I considered the end. Now, I have heard that the director said he was actually undead that whole movie. So that would put him as Chris Higgins had killed him, and then he came back from the dead in the hospital. But I don't believe that. That's not the way my theory goes with these movies. I think when he was knocked out by Chris, because the axe didn't go that deep, and it had a mask which it hit first. I think he was knocked unconscious and probably had such low vitals that they just figured he was dead, or maybe he even did die for a minute or two.
Right.
And so then they took him in, and then he came back too, and then killed everybody. And then obviously died in Part 4. Part 5 was where, and then Part 6, of course, the resurrection. Now, as far as him being killed, no, I don't think you can. Some people you have that Evil Dead knife there that's supposed to, that took him to hell and all that. But, with Jason, every time he ended, boom, he's back. So you can take him out. You can even take him out, apparently, for years. Now, I think originally had Tommy not taken Horseshack over there to fucking dig him up, there would be no more Jason, because he was killed in 4.
Right.
And because of that electricity and that obviously was sent down directly. So that was no coincidence. And then from that point on, no, he can't be killed. He's half rotten coming out of the lake. You can see all his spine and stuff. And then when they blew him into bits, how he came back together, I don't know. But that's part of that supernatural Deadite Evil Dead connection.
Right. Okay. So this one I don't have on the list, but I wanted to ask it. I don't know exactly how to go about it, so I'll let you kind of like figure out a way to, without like going into the whole detail of the story again. But can you explain or like piece together the timeline from parts 1 through Jason X? Like which versions go where, so to speak?
Oh, well, I mean, this is the way I explain them is, of course, if you looked at my little 4 story there about how they got married, whatever.
Right.
Then you got. I'm not sure exactly how to if I'm getting your question right, but you just want me to run through the timeline real quick, the way I pretty much see it, or
more of like what orders do the movies happen? So like, and then like anything that might have happened in between. Like for example, we know that parts 2, 3, and 4 are kind of back to back to back, and then like Jason X is the very end. You know what I mean? That type of thing.
Right. And a few years went by between. You had the Roy murders going on, and between 4 and 6. I'm not sure how many years were from 6 to 7. Yeah, it's an interesting thought back on to where does Jason just go back to his stomping grounds, and as long as nobody bothers him, they're good for a while until something comes up and draws him out, or he then sat at the bottom of the lake for how many years each time? I don't know.
Right.
He's been sunk a few times. So,
right.
Yeah, that was an interesting thought.
Yeah. I'm gonna go through a list of all the survivors, including final girls and guys. I'm excluding Jason X from the list. And I would like to know your thoughts on what you think those survivors are doing with their lives and how they are mentally after they encounter Jason. Sound good?
Okay.
All right. So what about Ginny?
Ginny, I think, since she was a psych major, and she was very, very, she ended up being very strong-willed.
Mm-hmm.
Like the hero girl, the final girl. She ended up like finding courage that I don't think that she knew that she had.
Right.
I think that she thinks that her psychology trick on Elias, or who that was Jason, was somewhat successful. So I think after all was said and done, she recouped, she grieved, and I think she went on to have a very successful psychology career using her experience as a jumping point, and she wrote several novels as a psychologist.
Okay.
And I think she went on to do well in the psychology field after that. I think it benefited her in the end.
All right. Oh, Chris, poor Chris. What happened to Chris?
Chris is in the freaking nut house. She lost her freaking marbles, dude. She is gone. She is still to this day laughing at the wall. She is just banana nuts. She's gone.
What about Trish?
Trish. Now, she had a rough go. I see her as a survivor. Probably went on to get married, have kids. Probably took care of her little brother for a while. I think she's scarred by it. I think it's a little bit of a burden on her, but I think she has pretty successfully moved on with her life and has come to grips with everything and is doing okay.
Right. I can see her also like going around to people that have felt trauma and like being like a motivational speaker type thing too. I can see that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And what some group therapy and stuff.
Right. What about Tommy?
Tommy's an interesting one. He it was 6 is the last one we saw from him. I don't know. I feel like Tommy didn't have a big happy ending. I think Jason just tormented him over and over again, no matter what. And I won't say he committed suicide or anything like that, but I think he is just like almost like homeless. He doesn't thrive in today's world. He's super antisocial. He still has to take the meds. He's still bothered all the time. He'll never be normal.
Right. What about Pam?
Pam from
Part
which
5.
one was she?
She was Melanie
Part
Kinnaman
5.
from Part 5.
Oh yeah. Okay. Part 5. Oh yeah. Her and Reggie.
Yes.
Reggie the Reckless. Yeah, I think she. I could see her doing like talk show circuits and shit. She went on to be on like all these talk shows talking about this copycat killer who had killed all of her friends and how she and the boy had rescued it and so on and so forth. And I feel like I could see her doing that, and then this being kind of a very interesting story, and then writing some books again.
Right. What about Reggie?
Reggie the Reckless. That fella went on to success. He used his sense of humor. I think he became a comedian. Unfortunately, he lost his brother Demon to those damn enchiladas. But I think he went on to use his funniness and maybe did some comedy. Maybe became a comedy writer or something.
Right. I would like to think that when Reggie turned 18, him and Pam finally became boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
And same with Tommy. I would like to think he went on to marry Megan, have a couple of kids, but I don't know, like he was so tortured and tormented over the course of years. I don't see Tommy having that happy ending like you said. But speaking of Megan, what happened to Megan?
What did happen to Megan? Yeah, she lived. She was so funny, and hot. She went on to be very successful because she was a smart ass, and I think she went on to college, and I think she just tried to forget.
Right.
I think she washed everything away. She went on to college, had a great time, married a quarterback or something. Well, not a quarterback, because she wouldn't be into the quarterback type, but got married, had kids, and lived happily ever after.
Sounds good. What about Tina?
Tina. She's a tortured soul too. She is a tortured soul too. Then her mother was killed by her fucking dirty doctor.
You can say Jason killed her, but Dr. Cruz freaking used her as bait. He was a dick.
Yes, he needed to die terribly.
Yeah, I interviewed Terry Kaiser, and when I introduced him, I said he played the vile Dr. Cruz, and he said, "Thank you for that amazing introduction."
I think Tina was a tortured soul, but I think she, through much therapy, and after defeating Jason, I think that that kind of put an answer on what's been kind of bothering her for a long time. She kind of got some kind of closure,
right,
on her feelings and her powers and what's her work, what's her point, what's her purpose, kind of thing. And then I think she got closure when she killed Jason. And then she, like I said, she was a tortured soul, but I think she slowly kind of like healed herself and went on to live a relatively normal life.
Cool. What about Nick?
Nick was killed in a motorcycle accident. No. Let's see. The guy, he didn't do a very good job of defending Tina. I don't know. I think he just went off and
did his own thing.
Yeah. Didn't even bother him.
Right. So the next couple of people I'm going to do in groups because they were more or less, couples in either relationship ways or family ways or whatever. What about Rennie and Sean?
About who?
Rennie and Sean from Part 8.
Oh.
And cute little Toby, who's probably dead, I would think, by now.
High school sweethearts.
Yep.
They seemed like a genuine couple. Someone that actually stayed together, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. What about Jessica and Steven and little was it Stephanie? I think the kid's name was.
I'm trying to think which part.
Jason Goes to Hell.
Okay. Oh yeah, with the little baby.
Yes.
Yeah, they raised that baby together.
Okay, sounds good. From Freddy vs. Jason, Laurie and Will.
Oh, Laurie. Yeah, I like to think that they ended up together, and
Nice.
because they had so much in common, and the people that didn't believe them when they were, it was basically them against the world.
Yep.
So, yeah, I like to think that they kind of, evened out and got back to normal.
Right, and the last one, Clay and Whitney.
Clay and Whitney. Whitney. Yeah, obviously their mom died from cancer, wasn't it?
Yep.
And, yeah, so I would assume that the two, he came there to rescue her, and he took her home. And they, she was able to go visit her mom and everything, and, say her goodbyes and that kind of thing. And then I think the two of them helped each other out until, they got on their feet and everything got back to normal.
Sounds good. So last question I got for you. Any other theories or anything about the storyline that I may have missed or that you want to, discuss and say about, expand on before we end the interview?
No, not really. Just that, Elias was actually the hooded killer. Roy was the father of Joey and Jason.
Nice.
And this all ties everything together. I do want to work a little bit, like I said, on the origin of Tina and possibly Tommy's father.
Okay.
And why there's such a connection between the two. Other than the fact, the only other obvious thing would be that the connection would be somehow if Jason had seen him in these masks that he wore, and had a little hideous face looking thing too, and I don't know.
Okay. So I would love to have you back once you get that part, we can kind of leave off where we left off and start into those things. It probably won't be as long of an interview. We've been having this interview for over 2 hours now. My longest interview I've had. My longest before this one was with Nancy McLaughlin, and it was an impromptu interview. I worked an 8-hour shift. I was 2 hours home from work, and she called me right when I pulled into my parents' driveway because I was visiting them for the weekend. So she called me right when I pulled in and said, "Scotty, I'm so sorry we missed the interview before. Can we set up another interview right now?" I'm like, "I just drove home for 2 hours after an 8-hour shift of work," but I'm like, "Why not?" And we had my first ever impromptu interview that went on for an hour and a half. And I was actually talking to her, and she wants to set up a phone call, not an interview or anything, but just kind of to catch up and everything. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, but yeah.
I'm trying to get all this together because I'm working on a book.
Yeah.
So I want to get this whole timeline fixed and all in a book, and still ironing out some of the later stuff like you and I just discussed.
Yeah.
And once I get those dialed in, though, hopefully then it'll be typing it out and then, double check for grammatical errors and all that crap. And then there you go.
Is the book already written? Most of it?
No, what I have is I've been doing video parts. I have a bunch of private videos that as I'm telling the story and I'm correcting things. And then someone might have a question, and whether the question goes against something that I said and I have to figure out how that works, or a question that I had not been asked before, hadn't even thought about, and so I'll put a theory behind that, and see if it matches up with any of the other stuff. And
nice. So did I give you anything that you have to look back at?
Well, I am going to check more into, like I said, the Tommy origin or Tommy's father and the Tina origin or her dad. Did she get her powers from her dad?
Okay.
Who is her dad? Where did he come from? And just trying to get more in depth into the later movies in the franchise, as in depth as I am in the first 5.
Right.
So because I went in that order, so
Right.
I still got a lot to finish up on the other end there, and then get them all 100% connected, but they'll work. And so far, everything's coming together right nicely.
I really, really loved this interview. It was very insightful. It really showed me a lot as a fan myself of the franchise, kind of like where things, that didn't make sense in the Friday the 13th timeline and kind of narrow things down. Because, Friday the 13th Part 2 and Part 3 were basically the same day into the next day type of thing. And Jason has hair in one.
Was Saturday the 14th.
Exactly. Jason has hair in one and he's bald and exactly not long later, but thinking of it being Elias in Part 2 and Jason in Part 3, it, really carries things over and it makes a lot more sense than, it originally did. Thinking of him with hair, literally, like, what did he do? Did he shave it off? You know what I mean? Like, it didn't add up. So
yeah, exactly. It just answers, and the fact that I want to say it was a 6'6" versus a 6'2" or a 6'4".
Yeah.
So there was a huge difference in height, build, and again, Chris Higgins showed.
Yeah.
At least 2 or 3 summers ago that he was wearing the same clothes he's wearing right now.
Exactly.
And that was all going on because just yesterday was the dude in flannel killed everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And got his shoulder hacked, and when he showed up and killed Harold, he was able to lift that arm and whack him with the meat cleaver or whatever pretty easily. He showed no scarring, no whatever, and of course it was the same clothes he's been wearing for years.
Right.
And since they steal their clothes basically off of clotheslines or just get them wherever they are, that doesn't happen very often. So you get your clothes, you just wear it forever until you have to go find something new.
Right. And you may have answered this question. I did have one more that I thought of. So, was Jason a boy when Friday the 13th Part 2 was happening with Elias killing, and how did he become an adult in Part 3 if that was the case?
Okay, so no, he was an adult.
Okay.
So when he washed up on shore in 1957, he was the boy that we all think of, the boy in the dream sequence, the boy. Now, that was 1957, 67, 77, 80. He was like 20, 22, 23 years old.
That makes sense.
By the time Part 2 was going.
Yeah.
So he would have been walking around in that green shirt, following his dad around, learning how to kill, how to trap, how to hunt.
Right.
And I think this would make the most amazing fan film because you could reshoot Part 2, everything. You could even rent the real house, but the wheelchair scene, all of it from a different point of view, where it's Jason watching Elias do it.
Yeah.
And then with the full, 4-story and all that, and then the Roy, but.
That'd actually be pretty cool. I heard that there's a fan film coming out. I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but it's a prequel to Part 1, where they're gonna be. I just seen it on the Friday the 13th franchise.com website. Somebody is doing an Indiegogo, I believe, for it, and they're gonna explore the early life, the teen years of Pamela, up to her family life, her marriage, and into Jason's childhood up to his drowning. And into the deaths of from 1979.
In my story, I'm putting that in there too, and how she,
nice,
in the little town she grew up in, and then how she met Elias, and where she worked, and her aspirations, and then of course Roy at that time was young. He was like wanting to go to med school, so he was trying all this pre-med crap, but he ended up, just an ambulance driver instead,
right,
or paramedic, whatever.
Yeah. And I'm a filmmaker as well. I don't know if you followed any of my Gravestone Films posts or anything. We have our first movie coming out called Samhain. But even like a fan film of Friday the 13th, because obviously we can't make money off of it. but a fan film off of Friday the 13th based on these. And if you even, I don't know if I would do it, of course, but if I ever did, and I would obviously ask your permission if I could use any of your theories, and and maybe I would even recruit you as part of the scripting team and help me like narrow it down. I mean, I would definitely give you as much credit as possible with it.
Where do you live at?
We live out in I live in Maryland, but the film company's based out of Ashland, Pennsylvania, which is where my parents and my family's from, and a lot of our local actors from my first movie are in.
I got a lot of friends that are shooting over there in that area.
Nice. Yeah. Do you ever hear of Centralia?
In Oregon. I was like, hope somebody be shooting around here sometime. I'd love to.
Yes. Did you ever hear of Centralia?
What?
Did you ever hear of Centralia, Pennsylvania?
I have not.
You have to look into the history of Centralia. You would be fascinated with Centralia. Centralia is like it's an underground mine fire, and they basically think it's like hell coming to Earth. You ever hear of it?
I think, is this the one that they equate to like Silent Hill?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
we filmed some of my movie in Centralia. I live 5 minutes from Centralia.
Wow.
Yes. And every time,
a cool area to be able to backdrop.
Yeah, exactly. And we filmed in Centralia. There was a lot of places inside that we couldn't film on Graffiti Highway because that's no trespassing. We couldn't film in the graveyard itself because it's no trespassing. But there's a spot all the way behind the graveyard in the middle of the woods that people have bush parties, and they do bonfires and that. And we did our ending scene up there, and we did a couple of like scenes throughout the middle of the movie to the side of the cemeteries in Centralia. But it was very fun, and like we filmed the ending scene at like 12 o'clock at night in the woods of Centralia, and everybody was feeling so many ghost and spectral presence. It was crazy.
Huh.
Because it's a haunted place.
I shoot I do a lot of videos like skits,
right.
comedy horror skits.
Nice.
And but I have ideas for movies.
Nice.
Like two in particular, but so this last summer I decided to hell with it. I'm gonna go shoot this movie, and
right.
so all I had was my niece and her friend. I said, get a friend.
Nice.
And so what we did is we went to the and I have a nice camcorder, but I got two of them. They're 1080p, whatever. They're nice,
right.
but they're not like movie cameras, But
right.
so we went. I took her to the fucking. Oaks Park is the United States. I think it's the second largest like outdoor carnival type, whatever you call it.
Right.
Amusement park. And so we just went down there, and I acted like I was like filming my niece, with these camcorders, but so I could use that whole fucking carnival as a backdrop.
That'd be
I got
awesome.
I bought foam axes and shit, and
nice.
All this movie blood and everything. So I filmed half of it. Now, the first half that I filmed, I still have to film the death scenes that I insert in there, and then I have to film the second half, which is the big death scene. Everything. I got my buddy's got a fire truck.
Nice.
And we're going to use my other buddy's drone for a shot.
Nice. Yeah.
But I ended up. I just took what I had right now and I made a little fake trailer out of it, the Carney trailers.
Nice.
So I was using the camcorder and then making it look really vintage, putting lines in the film, making it look old, like Grindhouse, and it actually worked perfect with a camcorder to do that. But I hope to finish that this next summer. And
nice.
I also I've been doing a lot of like voice work lately, which has been a lot of fun. I get a lot of people calling me to do like little fake trailers and stuff for them.
Nice.
And I love that kind of thing.
That's awesome. That's great.
But check out, if you get bored, check out my playlist.
Sounds good.
Spam Chucker's Castle.
That's the last question I was going to ask. Anywhere you want people, anything you want to promote, anywhere you want people to find you, anything that you want to reach out?
YouTube, Spam Chucker's Castle.
Okay.
Just the best of playlist is where I keep all my skits and stuff. I am on Facebook under Troy Oelke, Oelke. However, I'm kicked off that profile at the moment. I'll be back on again. I get kicked off all the time for shenanigans, like all the time. So anyway, yeah, that's where most can reach me. I think I have an Instagram, but I don't hardly use it. I don't know what the hell the address is. Twitter, I only go on there to troll people. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Check out Spam Chucker's Castle on YouTube. I actually got that name by throwing spam. I won a contest where I had to throw spam across the room and do a bucket, and I won.
Nice.
So they called me Spam Chucker Jones, and it stuck.
Nice. So after I turn off the stop recording and everything, I'll message you and I'll let you know our Gravestone Films Facebook page and our YouTube page, and if you can give us a follow, I'll give you a follow on YouTube as well, because I know
Awesome.
Greg was telling me about all your videos and I really wanted to get a chance to watch them. I haven't gotten a chance yet because I'm so busy with working and this pandemic going on, so I'm working from home, and because of
they're
this
just goofy, no budget skits.
Yeah, sounds great. I would definitely look into them, and everybody else listening, go give them go look at them, follow them, get them a subscription on YouTube, and thank you, Troy, for coming on.
Back.
What was that?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me, and I would. I was saying I'll sub anybody back.
Awesome.
Trade subs, but yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Yep,
not a problem. Had a really good time. You're fun to talk to, and
thank you.
I would gladly do it again sometime.
Awesome, thank you. Definitely, we'll be in touch, obviously, for just talking, the bullshit, or just to talk about anything about horror, Halloween, Friday the 13th, whatever you're into. And I'm a big horror movie buff, so I would definitely be into that. Awesome. Thank you again, and you have a good rest of your night and stay safe.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.